The night banners curled like dark wings above the Utah Valley University auditorium, flexing in the air-conditioned draft each time a door opened, and a tide of undergraduates washed in. It was early evening, late enough for the lights to turn the atrium glass into a mirror, early enough that the mountains outside still held a dull violet outline against the sky. On the floor, rows of folding chairs angled toward a low stage. The stage itself was simple, a lectern with a pair of microphones, 2 flags, and a big screen that kept freezing on the same slide, a portrait headshot and a slogan. Mara Ellison took her place halfway up the aisle and leaned against the handrail. She preferred the vantage high enough to see lines of sight, low enough to catch faces, the ones that paid attention and the ones that scanned the exits. She had long ago shed the habit of pretending she was just another figure in a crowd. The badge, tucked in her inner jacket pocket, carried a particular gravity that never quite let her forget that she was first and last a witness. Sometimes to what people did. Sometimes to what they would not admit to doing. Students perched at the ends of aisles, hugging backpacks to knees, trading breaths as if gossip were oxygen. A freshman with a paper wristband whispered into a phone, "Yeah, we're in. We're actually inside," as though arriving at an ordinary lecture removed them from history. Campus security clustered near the doors. 2 city officers stood at the back, sharing a bottle of hand sanitizer after shaking too many eager hands. The house lights dipped. A polite roar rose and pressed the air, warm and animal. On stage, Charlie Kirk walked into the frame of the lights and settled behind the lectern, one hand steadying the edge, the other lifting with practiced timing. The crowd tensed in unison the way crowds do when they recognize cues. The talk had not even begun, and already the room had pledged itself to listen. The first minutes were boilerplate. Thanks to the university. Joke about parking. A nod toward the row of administrators near the wall, who made the faces of men and women for whom every nod came with a reminder to breathe through the controversy. Mara let the words slide past. She studied the margins, the catwalk above the stage, with its black ladders and a scatter of rigger's tape, the narrow triangle of roof visible through a high triangular window, the baffles that damped the room's echo and made the applause sound like surf. She had come as a favor off duty. A friend in campus security had said, but the job braided itself into muscle and never untwisted. She looked for the odd rhythm, the person walking upstream while everyone else flowed forward. From time to time, a flash popped someone's phone set wrong, lighting a small dome of faces. The lights on stage warmed brighter, and with them came a filament of heat that bounded off the ceiling and returned to wrap the room. Kirk settled into his rhythm. A beat, a pause, a mid-sentence, pivot, the laughter a step behind, and then catching up. Mara took a note. She didn't need the 2 security officers were drifting toward the outer doors, drawn by the middle distance of the chattering hallway. A third had stationed himself near the stage left stairs and kept scanning the crowd with the twitch of a man who wished he had an earpiece. Mara followed his gaze, then tilted her head an inch up, always up. Most rooms are designed to communicate one way from stage to seats. That's the human geometry of performance. But violence speaks upward and outward. If you want to stop a speech, you don't step into the light. You find the places where sound dies and sight lines cross catwalks, balconies, rooftops, that promise seclusion and a clear angle. She traced an invisible line from the lectern to the laws of trajectory, from there to there, if the shot came from inside, from there to there, if it came from the annex roof outside the glass. Kirk leaned in. "Here's what nobody tells you," he said. Mara didn't catch the rest. The sound did not belong to the room. It came from beyond the glass, a report that was less a boom than a hard subtraction, as though someone had cut a clean wedge from the air. For a beat, the crowd did nothing, because every crowd has that beat. It hung suspended, then broke. Shrieks soared and split as chairs snapped backward. A young man in a campus polo raised his hands in a pantomime of calm and said it's okay to nobody and everybody. A girl in the front row covered her mouth with both hands. Somewhere, someone knocked a water bottle to the floor, and it rolled and rolled endlessly as if the room had become a slope. On stage, the lectern lurched. Kirk's hand shot to his neck. It was not a dramatic clutch. It was a confused, practical gesture, the move of a man trying to find the source of an interruption. He folded not like a tree, and wind trees have dignity in their collapse, but like a tent when the last stake is pulled. The microphone caught the soft percussion of contact and fed it back as a crackle. Mara's body moved before she had fully registered the direction. She was in the aisle, then at the stage stairs, passing a security officer who was still radioing nothing into his shoulder. She dropped into the angle where the curtain broke, pressing one knee to the floor because people listened to someone kneeling more than someone standing. "Clear the apron," she said. "Pull the flags." She said it because it sounded like a plan, and plans hold people to the present. The sound system cut. In the sudden hush, the crowd made a raw human noise, the plea without language that makes itself in 1,000 rooms on 1,000 nights, whenever something irreversible happens. "Shoot her," one of the city officers asked, and the words skittered across the stage like a coin. Outside, Mara said, "Hi. Glass window, annex roof." She pointed. There. The triangular window above the curtain banked a reflection of the auditorium's lights. Beyond it, darkness had thickened to the blue that comes just before night admits it has no more tricks. The rooftop that ran along the annex came to a shallow parapet. HEVAC fans sat like sleeping animals in a row. The angle from the lectern to that roofline was clean. She could feel the geometry of it in her own body, the way a memory of a hillside can be stored in your calves. She said, "Lock the doors. Not just the lobby. The service corridor, too." Someone had the sense to pull the rear curtains shielding the stage. Two students clung to each other near the footlights, eyes glassy with the knowledge that they would forever remember where they had sat. A woman in a red sweater began to pray under her breath and would not stop even when someone touched her shoulder. Even prayer needs inertia to slow. Kirk's eyes were open. He sucked air in ragged edges, consciousness flickering like a low bulb. A medic crouched, sliding fingers under his jaw, murmuring what medics always murmur: reassurance. They do not require themselves. The wound was not the raw theater of television. It was small in its entrance and large in its implication. Blood is not a river until it is. Myra turned away from that and toward the roof because meaning lived there now. The glass door to the loading dock protested as they shouldered through. Outside, the campus had gone still in the way places grow still when everyone inside the buildings has decided to stay there. The evening smelled like heat in retreat, metallic and clean and thin. A security cart idled with its headlamps, whitening a patch of pavement, and a student with a lanyard kept asking, "What do you need me to do?" as if the question itself could be put to work. Mara took the flashlight from his hand and said, "Point it there," and he brightened because direction is a kind of mercy. The annex roof was a rectangle of tar and gravel with a maintenance ladder at the far corner, a narrow run that hugged the brick. A sign declared DONOTENTER in a font that had never saved a life. The ladder rails were cool under Mara's palms. She climbed quickly, feeling each rung like the rattle of a zipper being pulled on a different life. At the parapet, she paused and let her eyes adjust. Sound rose from the auditorium ventilation, a distended echo, a crowd's heartbeat. The rooftop was almost beautiful in its neglect. Pigeon feathers drifted in the eddies around the HVAC housings. The tar had bubbled in the summer sun, set into bubbles like moons. A paper coffee cup lay on its side as if a wind had tipped it and then changed its mind. And there, 4 paces in, from the parapet glinting like the thought of an answer, a brass casing spent and sullen, the mouth widened slightly by heat. "Don't touch," the city officer said reflexively from below. Mara smiled because she was not touching. A tiny constellation of black dots, burnt powder, speckled the gravel, a spatter that told the angle of discharge. She followed it to a scuffed oval where somebody had planted a boot and rolled up on the outer edge to lean into a shot. The gravel held an imprint, not miraculous, not television clear, but enough. Half moon, wear on the heel. A nick on the instep. A southerly pull in the stride, left foot dominant. She drew a path in her mind up the maintenance ladder, a slow 3 count to settle breath, kneel, rest barrel on the parapet, inhale. And no, the parapet lip was crumbly, the tar too soft, Better a free meal with the stock tucked tight elbow braced on the thigh. The shot would have been steady if the shooter had practiced even a little. Mara knelt where the scuff was and looked back through the triangular window. The angle to the lectern aligned with a ping somewhere behind her sternum recognition that is not triumph, just a shape clicking into its space. Where did he go? The cleanest killers do not leave empty coffee cups. This one had been careful and not careful, which fit a particular kind of person, someone who had rehearsed the part where he would be caught, not the part where he would need to disappear. She cast the light along the parapet. More gravel slurred underfoot, where a body had pivoted quickly. On the far side of the roof, a square of tar paper had curled back to reveal a maintenance hatch. It was partly closed, not locked. There was a finger smear on the metal lip, a short, blunt arc that had gathered dust and oil, and because the world is generous to detectives, the faintest crescent of skin cell sheen. "Got a hatch," she called down. "Send up prints and photos." She listened for the sound that tells you, if you are too late, the hollow stamping of footsteps on an interior ladder, but the building held its breath. Good. That meant escape had not been theatrical. He had not wanted to be seen leaving. He had taken a route he knew. He had time. The casing glimmered again. Mara crouched to the level of the rooftop skin and found caught in a seam of tar the thinnest copper curl a shaving from a case mouth, nothing a casual eye would notice. Picky ammunition old rifle Mauser if she had to guess from the sting in the air. Not every rifle leaves a smell like that, a mix of old solvent and dust warmed into fatigue. She filed it beside the casing, the scuff, the hatch. A person had occupied this spot and believed himself beyond consequence. As she stood, her phone trembled in her pocket campus dispatch, voice thin with the effort to sound procedural. "Detective Ellison EMS is transporting. Officer Hankins says they're asking for a command post." "North loading dock," she said. "2 perimeters. I want the service corridor to the maintenance room sealed." And listen, she looked again at the hatch. "We're not chasing a ghost. We're chasing a person who planned only half the night." She waited a breath for the acknowledgement, and then lowered herself through the hatch one boot at a time. The maintenance shaft breathed in a smell like old air filters and last year's rain. She counted rungs, listening between her own movements. At the bottom, a narrow corridor ran between cinderblock walls, painted a green that institutions favored when they wanted to suggest calm. A rolling mop bucket waited with its mouth open, as if for a word. Fresh scuffs had chewed a pale line into the paint on the corner where someone had taken the turn too quickly. She pressed her fingers to the line and felt grit dry against the pads. The shooter had gone this way because the world narrows in crisis. People take the path that looks like a path. Left, then right, the metal door that led into the service hall behind the auditorium. On the floor beyond, the fine dotting of gravel tear marked a trail as clear as the dotted line on a map in a child's book. It ran a dozen paces and disappeared at a threshold swallowed by carpet. But it had made it that far. Imagine the breath, the beat, the half-mad astonishment that the world still existed after you remade it. A shadow moved across the far end of the corridor and resolved into the campus officer from the stage stairs, face gray with too much adrenaline and not enough anchor. "Detective," he said, as if naming her could conjure order. "What do we have?" Mara asked. "Reports of a male running north lot," he said. "Backpack. Hoodie. Someone says he jumped the curb by the dumpsters and I don't know, moved like he'd been here before." Mara nodded as if the world had done something ordinary. "He has," she said. "Get me the camera grids for the annex and service halls for the past 7 days. And the access logs, any badge entries on maintenance doors. I want to see who has practiced being invisible." "Name," the officer asked. Mara looked past him, past the pried hatch and the scuff of tar on the threshold and the casing on the roof, toward the auditorium, where the crowd's silence had congealed into a tonic hum. She did not have a name yet. Names came from the details you could still smell on your hands after you climbed back into the light. "Soon," she said. "We'll have one soon." She stepped into the hall and the tangle of sound swelled sirens arriving just a breath late, radios cursing the distance of their own delays, 100 phones whispering thin prayers to their owners. In the triangle window above the stage, night had finished its transition. The roof lay black and bland again, innocent as an old photograph. But up there, in the place where sound had begun, the metal casing waited for a gloved hand and a bag, and the rooftop held the imprint of a knee that had kissed tar and gravel and believed that would be the last kiss the world required. Mara breathed in. The case had already built itself around a void, and the void had a shape she recognized. She followed the shape into the noise.